Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by Shane McGuigan here at the press conference for Daniel Dubois against Bogdan Dinu. Shane, how you doing?
Good, thanks Danny, mate.
Obviously not been long since I last saw you. There's not loads of new things to discuss, but I just want to ask about Daniel's training most of all. You've only had him for a few weeks leading up to this fight, so what have you been kind of focusing on in the abbreviated time frame?
Well, we just had to deal with sparring really, so we managed to get decent quality sparring. We've had Franco down, we've had George Fox as well down, and we've had Lawrence as well helping out in camp. So yeah, got some good rounds in. Do you know what I mean? In a short space of time, we've got some good solid work in. You're not going to see a completely, rejuvenated Daniel Dubois in terms of from a stylistic sort of standpoint. But if I can work on a few things, we've been working on his feet a little bit, making sure that he's attacking and he's not attacking at one pace. He's sort of shooting his attacks in, and then he's out of harm's way because he's tough. He has a tendency to sort of linger in the pocket a little bit too long. And at the top level, you just can't do that. So yeah, look, we've had some good quality sparring, and just excited about Saturday night. I think Bogdan Dinu he's no slouch. People are obviously going to write him off and say he's sort of his two big fights he hasn't prevailed, but he gave Pulev some problems. Hurt him with the right hand over the top, and Miller just sort of steamrolled him. But as I think I mentioned it before, Miller might have tested positive straight after that, so you can't really take a lot from that. So, but Miller's gone out to spar him, so he's obviously taken this fight very serious, and he's going to be pretty well prepared.
What insight can you give us into the sparring sessions between Daniel and Lawrence? A lot of people have commented on the pictures online of how big Lawrence looks. He looks more like a heavyweight than the other guys, including George Fox in the picture. What do you make of their sparring?
I think that was just the angle. I think Dan was standing a few feet behind. But look, Lawrence is everyone knows that Lawrence is huge. He goes pretty heavy in between fights. And he was probably about 101 kilos in that pick. So, but Dan's 110, so that's his fighting weight. Do you know what I mean? So there is a big difference in sort of size and thickness. But Lawrence has definitely got the frame to kind of go up into the heavyweight division. But the sparring sessions were solid. Do you know what I mean? It's exactly what Dan needed, because Lawrence throws a lot of punches. He's quick. A lot of heavyweights sort of, when you bring them down to spar, they've got 30 seconds of good work in them, and then they go to sleep. Whereas Lawrence is consistent with his work. So Lawrence really helped us out for the last few weeks, and there wasn't too much wars. It was more of a technical sort of spar between the two of them, and respectful. But that's exactly what Dan needs. He doesn't need to have tear-ups all the time.
A press release came out earlier this week hinting at a possible rematch in the future for Daniel and Joe Joyce. And I asked Daniel this question, but he was a bit coy on it. If you'd have been Daniel's trainer at the time of the Joyce fight,
it's hard to say that. Do you know what I mean? Because it also it's disparaging towards Martin and what Martin's done. And I think what Dan needed, sometimes you need that loss, and sometimes you need that focus to rebuild and focus. And even if I was in the corner, he might have been naive to what he needs to do now. Do you know what I mean? And that's just the way it is, So people said that all the time about me and George Groves. Or what about if you were in the corner for Frotch, And it's probably a good thing I wasn't in the corner, because he might not listen to me as much as he did after the losses. So it's everything's just about time and the way it all falls into place. And I think now we're going to look at progressing the career. And I think what he did do is he in that fight against Joyce's, I think he did some good stuff. He just sort of left his head in the pocket a little bit too long, just the sort of stuff that we were saying. And he definitely showed that he's more than capable of boxing at top level. And someone like Joe Joyce is, I believe, one of the top 7 or 8 heavyweights in the world. So he's not far off the top boys.
And is it a rematch that you'd welcome, or is it more just about getting Daniel where he needs to be, regardless of who he has to go through?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a rematch down the line. It's just for now we need to focus on Dan, focus on getting his confidence back up, getting him into the right positions to fight for the right fights. I think Joe had the Bryant Jennings fight. He had a few tests beforehand, and Dan's biggest test was probably Nathan Gorman. Someone that was also relatively quite inexperienced. So yeah, I think down the line, look, at the two of them, I think Joyce is about 34, maybe 35 now, and Dan's 23. Completely, like one's at the start of his career, one's needs to, even though he turned pro so late, but he needs to really maximise this next couple of years. Whereas Dan's got a lot of time, and we don't have to go crazy and rushing that rematch. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, we'll if it happens down the line, then great.
While we're here, I want to get your take on Devin Haney's performance against Jorge Linares, and also if there's a potential fight between Haney and Luke Campbell, because they've been exchanging a few words, I'm sure you've seen on social media.
And also Linares and Campbell. Well, Robert Diaz messaged this morning. So I think Haney boxed well. I think he got stunned a little bit, but all in all, I thought he boxed pretty well. I don't think he's got the power to really move up through the weight divisions, but I think he's got great length in his jab, and his best shot is his jab. Good defensively. He's a sort of kid that's maximised his abilities, in my opinion, because he's not that fast feet, he's not that powerful, but he's got a long range. He's got a decent sort of like that Mayweather tuck down style, and he's been in the gym since he was like 6-7 years of age, in a very good gym. So he's more than capable of boxing. I know he's only 22, but I just don't think, like, maybe over time he might develop a little bit of pop. But I think the power with him is going to come from speed, and I don't think he's that quick. But I think he's, him versus Garcia. It's a great fight. But Teofimo Lopez, I think Lopez will beat him. So, but going back to Luke and that, I think that was just Luke's sort of standing up for himself to say, look, if I'd have hit you with that same shot, then you'd have been asleep, because Garcia was up at 2. His powers of recovery were incredible. So he was dropped, he was out, and he was straight back up, and his legs were steady. Whereas that was at the end. We just don't know. Devin Haney could be the same. He could have fantastic. Youth is also a great thing for recovery. So we could also have, if that had been early on in the round and he got hit with that shot, how would he have dealt with it? But I think time will tell. But look, both those guys are top quality fighters, and I think Luke can obviously speak for himself and see what sort of fight he wants to choose. But I think it'd be hard to get the Devin Haney fight off 2 losses.
And just before we let you go, you mentioned Mayweather briefly there. Just give us your thoughts on his exhibition against Logan Paul on Sunday.
I really haven't seen much of it, to be honest. So, but yeah, I haven't seen much of the build-up. I don't really want to take too much time to talk about it. It's a good money spinner. I don't think it's good for boxing, but if anyone's deserved the right to be able to fight in front of a crowd and on pay-per-view against a YouTuber, I think it's Floyd Mayweather, because he's had 49, 50 fights all in front of decent opponents. Well, definitely 30 of his opponents have been very, very good quality standards. So he's obviously not what he used to be, but he is. But yeah, he's earned the right to do it. But I just don't think I don't think it's good for his legacy. I don't think it's good for boxing.
Brilliant, Shane. Really appreciate your time.